Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We've seen some scary intraday candles in ETH USD, so I thought it'd be a good time to do a similar roadmap type of video and discuss is the bull market over, discuss some trade ideas, and do all that fun stuff. I'd normally do the intro at this point. I think it's a good idea to skip it, get straight to the analysis, and then do the intro stuff, extra links at the end. If you prefer that approach, hit like, and let's go. Monthly levels. Lowest close, highest close, midpoint. I've essentially delineated the old range, which is still relevant in ETH. The consolidation, which preceded the bear market. Lowest close, highest close, and then the midpoint is just the midpoint between those two levels. Support, resistance, doesn't matter. Range high, range low. Eat your heart out. Monthly close happened recently. That's helpful. The context it provides us is that currently on the monthly time frame, ETH USD is bullish. Why? Because the monthly closed above this resistance or old range. Generally, technically speaking, when price reclaims one side or one boundary of an old range, it will move towards the other boundary or the opposite boundary of the range, with the midpoint acting as a kind of midpoint, which doesn't tend to be trend reversing, but rather a stumbling block, an area to take some profits, maybe to compound if it breaks, and provides a shorter term bias given the space between these levels. Certainly if you're dealing with high time frames, tends to be quite significant. That's the monthly roadmap. 394, closed above it, that's positive. Monthly objectives, 532, 669. The positive thing about the monthly time frame and the significance of the 394 reclaim is it gives us not only really clear invalidation, but also downside targets if this idea fails. If 394 fails to act as support, then the current price action would suggest a failed range reclaim, which would be bearish, right? Market broke out within an old range or back into an old range and failed to move higher. That would suck and suggest this is an unsuccessful attempt at such a reclaim as described. And the good thing is there is a lot of space until the next monthly level at 290 or 300. So clear levels and clear invalidation. If monthly support is intact, and that's what we have to work with on this time frame, I will not be bearish. If monthly support fails, I will be bearish, at least towards the next level at 290. I like to trade where there's a lot of space, and there is a lot of space between 394 and 290, or between 400 and 300. That's the monthly. Weekly time frame, very similar, but I want to add one technical structure. The first thing is, and just as a general note or pet peeve even, monthly levels are not perfect. They are not designed to be perfect. They are high time frame areas, and while it's true that price will often settle and interact with these levels meaningfully, I wouldn't read too much into it when it comes to lower time frame candle closes. Like if you have a monthly level and then price wicks through it on the M5 or even breaks it on the hourly and all this kind of stuff, you need to give it some breathing room. Let it ferment. Lower time frame price action at a monthly level can be really misleading. You could end up being the wick if you read too much into it. I generally jump at least one time frame lower, sometimes two. So if I'm looking at monthly levels, I want at least weekly closes to make my time frame determinations. If I'm dealing with weekly candles or levels, I want at least daily closes to make my determinations, etc., etc. So context here is important. I've got a whole video on time frames on my channel, which makes a lot of this stuff clear. So 2 points on the weekly time frame. First, because these monthly levels aren't perfect, this 300 area isn't perfect either. You can skin this cat in a million ways. Highest closes, wicks. You could even box out this entire consolidation or just box out the whole thing. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is 300 is a key area of market structure. What does that mean? On the weekly time frame, we had a clear bearish trend or bearish market structure whereby we were getting lower highs and lower lows, and that was invalidated. And the trend turned bullish, if you want to use those terms, on a very significant time frame, or on a high time frame, the weekly, when we saw a higher high as opposed to a lower high. That's important. Okay, so that's why this area matters. How exactly you want to delineate it is less important. Generally, what I'll do, if you do care about that stuff a lot, is I'll get my areas on from the higher time frames, my monthlies and my weeklies, and then I'll hop down to the daily and intraday to see if there's a specific level or structure that I want to refine the area with. But we're sticking to macro for now. The only other thing I'll add on the weekly is what I think is a valid cluster, this pre-breakout range, or this red candle, if we're going down that angle, at between 394 and 430. Those of you who watch any of our live streams, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 UTC, see you there, ask some questions. Those of you who are familiar with this type of technical structure, or if you've watched the link video, generally when we have an impulse move in the market that leads to consolidation, and you get another impulsive move, the consolidation itself is a useful both support resistance structure from range high to range low. That also means it's useful for directional bias. So intraday trading within the range, directional bias at the range boundaries. Enough faffing about with this. Let's add it to the chart and talk about it. So here we go, cluster top. And here we go, cluster bottom. You can see the cluster bottom and this 390 area I've been trading on about is extra significant because all the stars point towards it, basically. Now, what does that mean for directional bias? Well, let's go on the daily time frame and have that discussion. As mentioned, these clusters, these consolidations that land between impulsive moves, whether it's support resistance, a range, whatever you want to call it, they are useful for intraday trading and directional bias. So is the bull market over? For me to be willing to entertain that premise, at least from a level to level perspective, it's not unreasonable for me to ask that the best level of support on the chart, which is untested since its run, gets broken. So I'm not going to be bearish on the first pullback, or the first real pullback, unless I see a break of high time frame support. Okay, so what that break of high time frame support would look like, fairly straightforward, is weakness through this 390 area. And I don't mean weakness like this sort of stuff, where you get a wick below and it gets reclaimed and just tall wicks and no follow through, like you get a big bearish candle and then nothing happens. I really mean weakness, like this area needs to get completely plowed, and I think that would be a reasonable bias shift and very good evidence that we've got some retests to do closer to 300. But generally, I will not be macro bearish as long as macro support is intact. I think that's a reasonable proposition. If you disagree, I'd love to see you in the comments section. Sounds like an after-school bully fight. It's like, meet me in the comments section after the video. It's not what I mean. I'm just genuinely interested for your reasons for disagreeing. But anyway, for me, to be bearish ETH, break high time frame support, and then I'll be with you where there's a lot of space and easier short trades from 390 to 290. I don't think the trades on the short side are that or as easy in relative terms within the consolidation unless we're trading on an intraday basis, which is totally valid. So in order to be bearish, I think, just to be clear, high time frame, break 390, and there's plenty of space for me to get involved until 290. That would be macro bearish. For intraday bearishness, I think if we fall back within the range, so support at 430, which is the cluster top fails, that will be good evidence that we've got some retests to do at the range low. So I think there is an intraday play potentially from A to B, depending on how that price action unfolds. So what are the bullish arguments? Well, the macro bullish argument is that we're still above the support level that matters. So that's great. But what about shorter term price action? What's bullish, or how do we get on board longs, or, you know, reach Narnia, the range midpoint for a start? There are two setups that I'd like to see that would cause this technical analysis to come to fruition. One is a failed range high reclaim. Sounds like complete crap. What I mean is I want the market to poke back below the range, which would typically be bearish. Now, what it does after doing so, I'm not terribly concerned with. Does it want to chop around the midpoint, wick close to the range low, maybe even tap it, etc.? Doesn't really matter. What I'd like to see is a break back within the range that then gets reclaimed, right? So below 430, we should certainly get more participants involved in the short side and then end up getting back above it. Now at that point, whether it's consolidation into continuation or a classic break and pullback that gets me there, I'd be interested in doing business on strength above or through the range high, whichever form it takes. Now it could be as simple as a close above the level and then continuation. That's certainly plausible, but I'd certainly want to see price spend a bit more time here and build some structure to allow me to get some intraday risk definition. Remember, with these clusters, we like to be bullish above the range high, or where invalidation is closest at the extreme at the range low. Okay, so the setups I've just covered occur here. Let's talk about the ones that may occur at the bottom of the range, and it's essentially the inverse of what I've spoken about. A retest of support. Again, it could be as simple as ping pong, hit support, go up through cluster top as FTA, and then continuation towards the midpoint. That's certainly the most bullish scenario, but in terms of developing price action, or at least my preferred dreamy entry, would be a break below the level that's unconvincing or that's not accepted. Any sort of reclaim, you know, that something like this, I think, would induce a fair amount of participants onto the short side of the market, certainly if we spike some of these lows. A break and a failed retest, long story short, is what I'd like to see. Some sort of, again, consolidation into continuation, or the old break and retest. The FTA, or first trouble area, again, video on my channel, for such a move would technically be the cluster top, but given we're dealing with a monthly retest of a very important high time frame level, while the cluster top from 390 to 430 is technical FTA, I think that would be plenty fuel to trade higher towards 532. Summary. For some of you, this is the first time you're hearing my voice because you skipped straight to the summary section, didn't you? If you did, I don't blame you. We're still friends as long as you hit the like button. Long story short, is the bull market over? I'm not happy being bearish as long as the best level on the chart, 390, is holding as support. So I will join Team Bear and publicly denounce Vitalik if we see weakness below 390, which is our weekly cluster and monthly support. Below there, I don't even think you need a perfect entry. There's likely to be a lot of space until the next high time frame level closer to 300. But for now, from what I'm seeing right here on this pullback, that doesn't meet the criterion of breaking support that matters on a high time frame. Where are we now? I've got us at support at around 430. It could be as simple as a bounce and fly scenario, but my preferred longs would be, again, we're dealing with the extremes, the range high and the range low. What's my ideal range high setup? Break back within the range, do whatever you want, but then some sort of reclaim event that lets me get on board, be it via pullback or via consolidation into continuation. So strength above 430 after spending some time or a bit more time around here. I'm not a huge fan of immediate break, immediate retest. So some sort of developed price action which ends up in strength above 430. I'd love something like that. Don't have a crystal ball, can't give you more details. Hopefully your discretionary skills are up to par. That's the setup at the range high. And at the range low, basically a mirror copy of that. A similar attempt of breaking the level, which then fails on a bearish retest, and in a similar vein, gives me continuation into the cluster top, and then hopefully into the, at least the range midpoint at 530. I like to trade with their space, guys. If you want me to be bearish, give me some space. On intraday basis, sure, there may be some sort of reclaim, you know, A to B setup there, and if it's good enough, I'll take it. But if you want me to be high time frame bearish, break the high time frame level, and then we've all got a lot of space to join the party. For now, 430, range high, 390, range low. Let's trade this level to level, discuss some setups, and keep our cool, please. That's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this format. I've kept it shorter than my other 50 recordings I've tried. I really need an editor. As for intro stuff, live streams every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 UTC. We go over everything, answer questions, chat, and do all sorts of cool stuff. We'd love to have you. Subscribe to the channel for more videos, especially pre-recorded stuff like this. Please leave a comment as to what kind of stuff you want to see. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Help us out with the algos. Do whatever you want, but it'd be great to hear from you and get your feedback either way. And lastly, newsletter, Technical Roundup. I'm not trying to upsell you here. It's free. Link in the description. Donald and I write that every Tuesday. It gets sent out at 8 UTC. Lots more charts there, consolidated levels, clickable trading view links so you can just copy paste levels if that's your thing, and all sorts of good stuff there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your attention. Trade safe, trade well, and I'll see you on one of the Monday sessions or in the next video. Cheers, guys.